Here's what it's like to work with Alex Hormozi and his company acquisition.com to scale your business. So first off, let me clarify, I have not received any investment from Alex Hormozi and his acquisition.com company, but I am currently a part of their whole workshop program they are doing where they work with businesses that are hoping to potentially become portfolio companies of theirs in the future. If you haven't heard of Alex Hormozi yet, he's probably the biggest business influencer out there. Him and his wife, Layla, they own a company called acquisition.com. There's a private equity company that buys kind of like smaller companies and helps them scale. And then they try to sell them again to larger private equity firms. And he has gotten a lot of fame over the past couple of years because he produces some of the best business content you can find out there for like smaller businesses. And he has this really great way of taking stuff that's like kind of complicated and actually putting it into bite-sized pieces that are easy for people to understand. He has a couple different books. He has a YouTube channel. He has a podcast. If you're a small business owner, it's definitely worth checking out because he does produce a lot of great knowledge. And for the longest time, really the only way to work with him directly was to get invested in by his company. But that is a hard thing to do. Obviously, you need to be of a certain size. You had to kind of hit like their investment criteria. And then they had to choose to want to invest with you, which being a private equity company is very, very few of the deals that come through. But at the beginning of this year, they started this whole workshop group that they now run through their headquarters down in Las Vegas. And you probably, if you've consumed any of his content, you've probably heard about it. But basically what they do is they offer a 2-day workshop where you can fly down there. And that's like their level 1 workshop, they call it. I did that a few months ago. And what that consists of is basically 2 full days. There's like 80 to 100 people there. They have talks around different topics. They have like some small group sessions they do. Alex and Layla are very present for people that like want to kind of fanboy about them, right? And the whole point of it is to give you some business education that's very general. It's not necessarily focused on your business, but it was still very, very impactful. I got a ton away from it. And then a big part of what they do there is they upsell you to a more expensive thing, which was $15,000 a year for me to be a part of, which is their level 2. And with that level 2, basically what you do is you hire them for a year to work with you and help you grow your company. And they kind of advise you on how to grow your company on a, limited basis in a way that they would do if you were a portfolio company of theirs. And so you actually work with like the whole team. And they do a really big deep dive. And as a part of that, you get 2 workshops that you go to in Las Vegas where it's much smaller. It's like the one that I went to a couple weeks ago is, I think it was like 15 people, maybe a little more than that, maybe 20 people. And it's 2 super intensive days where you are working like very close knit with their team, very specifically on your business. And so the first one, $5,000 one-time fee to go to that workshop, and it's super general. New to entrepreneurship, or if you're a scaling entrepreneur, tons of great info. And then if you are really wanting to dive in, the $15,000 a year one is the one where you get to work for them and essentially hire them as like a consultant, right? And if you get value from the first one and you kind of like the message that he teaches, honestly, upselling to the level 2 is a no-brainer. And so even though it was pretty expensive at $15,000 for us, we didn't think twice about it. We signed up right on the spot. Anyways, going into this level 2 workshop, it was really interesting going into it with a real estate company because a lot of people who consume Alex Hormozi's content, the things that he goes into around customer acquisition and kind of building a business, it feels like it's hard to relate to a real estate investment company. But I guess going into like this level 2 where, they are going to be looking specifically at my company, I was actually surprised at how much of the different content around team building and marketing and the customer journey and everything else actually really applies to a real estate company. It's just not necessarily in the way that a lot of us think about it. And, so some of the biggest challenges, I guess, that I was faced with as I was going into that was they would regularly be pushing me on the fact that I kind of already knew what was working. I just wasn't doing enough of it. And so a very common journey with real estate investors, especially wholesalers and flippers, is they kind of go in, they make a little bit of money, they find out, something that starts to work. And then as soon as they find resistance, they go and try to do the next thing. And so as an example, what's very common is somebody starts up a direct-to-seller marketing company. They start doing direct mail. As soon as the direct mail starts to kind of like fall off a little bit in terms of its efficiency, or you give a month where it doesn't work quite as well for generating leads, then they'll go and they'll stand up a cold calling team, right? Or they'll go and they'll do some online marketing. And then what ends up happening is you end up having like a little bit going in all these different ways, and none of them are nearly as effective as they could be. And that's kind of like a very general level of something that's really common. The next sort of phase of that, and this is one of the reasons that you see a lot of people out there that have communities, podcasts, myself and this included, right, is because what happens, you get to a point in a real estate company where you sort of reach a level where it's very, very hard to keep growing, it gets more expensive, and you start to get your eyes on these other businesses that seems like they'll run very parallel to the real estate business that will make more money. And so this is why like almost every single established real estate investor has some kind of group, becomes a guru, does things like that. It's not because their business isn't working. It's because, we get our investing business to a certain level. We're getting past that feels harder than simply going and teaching people to do the same thing and making more money. And then once you get into that, and that starts to be successful, what ultimately happens, and again, I'm guilty of this as well, is they start to provide services-based businesses. So they start to stand up things like marketing companies for their community. They start to set up different kinds of trainings, different workshops, different kind of like affiliate networks, things like that to monetize the community network that they're building. And then ultimately what happens is that becomes a whole other business with more problems. The investment business starts to suffer. If they switch over to the investment business again, the community starts to suffer. If they're focused too much on that, all the other businesses that they start to support the community start to suffer. And ultimately what happens is this, you have this big back and forth where all your businesses aren't really doing awesome. They're also not really doing poorly, but they're kind of just surviving, and you're making a little bit of money here and there, but you're not making nearly as much as you could. This is exactly where I'm at right now. This is something that so many guests that I've had on my podcast, Collecting Keys, have sort of been down the same rabbit hole. And going into this conversation with Alex Hormozi's team, the biggest thing they opened up with was like, why are you doing this, right? And something that they really challenged me on was, instead of trying to do more of these like new things, trying to do these new things all the time, make a little bit more money, what if instead you just dialed things back and you focused on making your investment company better, since that has been the most profitable thing that I've done over the past couple of years, right? And the interesting thing is, obviously I thought about that. I'm not an idiot. And so I would kind of push back and say like, well, these are the ceilings I hit. These are the challenges that we faced. And their retort back to me was always like, well, you just feel that way because you don't know what it looks like at the next phase yet. And what you need to do is basically take a step back, review these different things, and like, here are examples that we have seen about how we can make this, how you can sort of get past this going into the future. Here's how you would kind of identify those constraints and get things moving forward. And one of the things that I really appreciated was all of the stuff that we worked through. And let me say that like before I went to this first level 2 session, there was a ton of pre-work that I did with their team. So they were very familiar with us. They're very familiar with our financials. They're very familiar with our process, with our team and everything else. And so going into it wasn't like I was sitting down with their team and they're like, tell us what you have going on. But they were fully prepared for all the objections that they knew I was going to have. And so when we're having this conversation about, where I'm convinced that I can't grow my real estate company anymore for XYZ reason, they're backed by data, by math, by financial models, by all the things that a mature business owner looks at as a company about why I need to reconsider kind of the direction that I'm going and instead need to probably just like refocus on the thing that's actually going to make money, and it would have been very easy for them to just sort of be like, because this is what we say, so we're more experienced entrepreneurs. But the fact that they had done so much homework and come very prepared to, have an educated conversation, I thought was really unique, because we've hired business coaches in the past. I've talked to a lot of friends, to mentors, things like that. And everything's always theoretical, or they're always kind of going off of like their base experience. Whereas like the whole acquisition.com team that we worked with, they had actual hard proven evidence and research that they had done that sort of like reinforced what they thought was going to be best for growing the business. And so at the end of everything, with every single person that we met with, we kind of met with like all of the subject matter experts that work there, and they all kind of give us different stuff. Every single one gave me like critical tasks on things that I needed to do before the second session in the spring that I'm going to be going to out there, which was super helpful, because now it wasn't just like they shot me down, I need to figure it out, but they were like, here's what we suggest that you do to sort of get past the things that we discussed. And so I have all this list of critical tasks. And that way, when I got back to my office and was able to sort of get back to work, I knew exactly where to focus to get things moving forward. And the big things that they basically left me with were to wind down the marketing businesses that we had been sort of building. Their ultimate thing was like, why are you doing this business that you've never actually scaled before when instead you could spend your time and resources growing the businesses that you already know how to do? Scale community that we run, they liked that business actually. They said that they think there's a ton of value in having like a paid networking business like that. And they said as long as it's not detracting from our resources and it actually is tertiary to a real estate business, it runs alongside our real estate business, it makes sense. And they had a lot of good views around how to structure it. So one of the things that we're doing is we're having a course that you can get now, instead of it being kind of like a higher ticket community only. We're having something that for people that aren't ready for that commitment yet, collectingkeys.com/academy if you want to check that out. It's our off-market investor academy with a Facebook page, as well as a bi-monthly coaching call on that. And then people that go through that and are happy, they can move up to our scale community, which is 3 times per week coaching, as well as a more comprehensive community with more serious investors. So we're reformatting that a little bit so that it's actually like building a larger network for us and for the people that are involved. And ultimately the goal with that is to help reinforce the growth of our wholesale and investment company, which is a networking company at the end of the day, right? Like if you go into off-market real estate or risk real estate in general, it's all about who you know. And one of the best way to have good people or good people in your network or good investors to do deals with is by training them to be good, right? To be better investors. And so by us for having scale, it has the monetary entry into that community, because that's how you know people are serious. If things are free, people don't take things seriously at all. We very hands-on coach them to make them better investors and grow their businesses. And then as a result, when we want our business to grow, we have more seasoned people that already have proven track records that we can work with. Okay. And as a result, we can lean into our investment business more heavily. We can optimize our marketing. We can optimize our sales. We can systematize that more, and we can focus on not getting distracted by too many other shiny objects. And then as we go forward, they had a whole bunch of financial models about what that growth could look like. They built a very compelling argument about why we should focus on that. And ultimately, it was kind of a no-brainer when I got back that we need to be shutting down the marketing businesses and moving towards that. And so it was an interesting experience. Like it was very, very, I would say like, I won't say disheartening, but it was eye-opening, I guess, the way that they were able to look at things from such a data-driven perspective and provide a lot of value in a way that I wasn't expecting. Also, too, I would say that I appreciated the fact that they were willing to have hard conversations with everybody there, and they weren't worried about like hurting people's feelings or things like that. But, you know, as they put it, there's no point in BSing people that are paying money to, you know, try and make their businesses as large and successful as possible. So ultimately, if you're an Alex Hormozi fan looking to grow your business, I highly recommend you look at their workshops, both the level 1 and the level 2 one. I've gotten a tremendous amount of value from so far, and it's definitely going to contribute to a ton of growth that we have over the next 12 months. And I'm excited to go back for my second session for the level 2 here in the spring. So if you guys have any questions about that, I'm happy to chat one-on-one about it too. Leave a comment below on this video, or you can hit me up on Instagram at Mike_invests, and I would love to hear your thoughts if you've been to the workshops or answer any questions you're considering going. So appreciate you guys listening. Subscribe to the channel if you find any value in this at all, and I'll see you guys next time.